We all know the Tree of Life as this magical place far away from the Pride Lands, a place where animals from all over the world come for healing and protection. We first see it when Kion and his guard had to go there to find healing. On their way, they saw many new places, including some snowy mountains. Which made me think, what if these were the same snowy mountains as in the newest Mufasa movie? If this is true, it is very likely that Obasi's shade tree is the same tree as the Tree of Life. But these snowy mountains are not the only reason I believe the Tree of Life could be Obasi's shade tree. Because when we listen closely to some things Kiros said when he was about to attack Obasi, this all makes sense. But before we get to that, let's first look at all the things we know about the Tree of Life, so that you're going to understand better what I'm talking about. We first hear about the Tree of Life when Rafiki tells Ono and Kion they must go there to find healing. The rest of the guard went with them, and they traveled a long way to find it. They met many predators, and even when they finally arrived, things still didn't go smoothly, because this is where we meet the Night Pride, protectors of the Tree of Life. After some troubles, Kion and his guard were finally accepted to come in, and eventually, they got to find healing. We even get to see the magical powers of the Tree of Life when Ono gets healed. Rare animals from all over the place come to the Tree of Life because it was a place where animals would be helped, and the Tree of Life must have been there for a very long time, since there were plenty of paintings made by royal Njuzis. It also wasn't Makini's first time visiting the Tree of Life, because she had met Rafiki there when she was younger. Here's what I'm trying to say by all of this, that this tree must have been there for a very long time. This brings us back to one of the reasons I believe the shade tree later became the Tree of Life. Because when Kiros is about to attack Obasi, he says that Obasi's pride is the last pride to live in the Valley of Kings. He tells Obasi that everything the light touches belongs to him once his pride is gone. With that, he includes Obasi's shade tree. In Kiros' iconic Bye Bye song, we hear him talk about how lazy Obasi is, lying in the shade, out of shape, unafraid. We all know that this isn't what Kiros stands for. He is a ruthless, trained killer that destroys everything in his path, because he believes he is the one true Lion King. So it wouldn't make any sense to call his new home a shade tree, like Obasi did. A new life for Kiros was starting at this tree, because after he killed off Obasi's pride, he had everything the light touches, so it wouldn't seem too crazy to me that he named the Tree of Life, instead of the Shade Tree. But if this really is the Tree of Life, how did it gain magical powers, and how did Queen Jana end up there? Well, we know that Kiros didn't stay at the Tree of Life after he killed Obasi's pride, because he went on to look for Taka and Mufasa to take revenge for the death of his son. So, with Kiros gone, it meant that there was now no one living at the Tree of Life. But how did Jana end up there then? Well, I think that Kiros had something to do with that, because we know that Obasi's pride wasn't the only pride that had been attacked by Kiros' group, the Outsiders. Because when Taka and Mufasa meet Sarabi and Zazu, we hear Sarabi say that she had also lost her pride because of the Outsiders. And when they finally did reach Milele, some other lionesses also said that they had been attacked by the Outsiders before. This tells us that Kiros and his pride know no limits, and attack every pride that stands in their way. So, what if Jana's pride was also a victim of Kiros' attacks? Jana might also have lived somewhere in the Valley of Kings. When Kiros attacked them, Janna and some others got away. But many others, like the parents of Rani and Balio, didn't. This would also explain how their parents died, because if they had always lived at the Tree of Life, the one like we know in the Lion Guard, they would have been helped if they were under attack. So, after Janna lost many lions of her pride, they went on the run. Janna had always been a very wise leader and let the voices in the wind guide her to a new place to live, until they came across the Shade Tree, which had now become the Tree of Life. Kiros and his group had been long gone by now, so Janna decided to build a new life right there. The voices in the wind guided her, and together with her son Surok, they started to create a new home inside the tree. But even though they had found a new home, it wasn't exactly a peaceful life yet, because Janna, Surok, and the few lions who survived with them were still recovering from the attacks. They had lost their family, their pride, and they were now raising two cubs, Rani and Balio, without their parents. But something strange started to happen. Surok, who had been badly injured while escaping the outsiders, suddenly began to heal faster than expected. And not long after that, they began to notice the land around the tree was changing too. There was more food, and the grass started to look greener. The tree just started to feel more alive. This was probably the first time the magical powers of the tree really started to show. They started to welcome every animal that needed healing because they never wanted any animal to go through the losses they had experienced. But I think there's another reason the Shade Tree could be the Tree of Life. Now, pay close attention because we're going to dig deep. If you have ever watched The Lion Guard, you know that Askari had discovered the Roar of the Elders at Chica Escarpment, a place next to the Tree of Life. And when we move forward to the end of The Lion Guard, when Vitani created her guard, we hear her say something interesting. She said she was now the leader of the Lion Guard because she was the sister of the future king. This tells us that she thinks you can be the leader of the guard if you are related to the royal family. But as we know, she wasn't the one to receive the Roar of the Elders from the great kings of the past. She only got it because Kion decided to give it to her. She probably wasn't able to get it otherwise, because Kovu wasn't really in the royal bloodline, and we know that Kion is, because he is the son of the real king, Simba. But let's dive even deeper into this, because we know that Scar, also known as Taka, was the leader of the Lion Guard before Kion. But when Scar used the roar for evil, he lost it. The great kings of the past probably sensed that Scar had bad blood and passed it on to the family of his brother, Mufasa. Now, I think that in the Lion Guard universe, Scar and Mufasa are considered real brothers, which makes this theory a lot easier. But even if you don't believe that, I think they were close enough for the great kings of the past to decide it was better to pass it on to Mufasa's bloodline. Either way, this now means that Kion is related to the leader of the former Lion Guard, which could be the reason he was chosen to receive the Roar of the Elders. As I just told you, we know that Scar had also been the leader of the Lion Guard and had gotten the gift of the Roar of the Elders, but we never know who was the leader before Scar. We know that Scar hasn't lived in the Pride Lands all his life. I think this goes for the live action and the Lion Guard version, so it would only make sense if someone from around Scar's area, where he lived when he was younger, would be the leader of the Lion Guard before him, which would be a lion in the Valley of Kings, near the Shade Tree, which in my theory is the Tree of Life. This also explains why Askari discovered the roar so far from the Pride Lands, and how the roar eventually did end up in the Pride Lands. So, the only reason that this adds up is if Obasi's Shade Tree is the Tree of Life. I know this was a deep theory, so let me go ahead and summarize it again for you. After Ascari ended his circle of life, his bloodline continued and new leaders of the Lion Guard were created. We know that Ascari had lived around Chica Escarpment, so that is probably where his bloodline continued. Until one of Scar's, also known as Taka's, ancestors got it. Kiros killed Scar's whole family, and Scar was the only one left in the royal bloodline, so he would get the gift of the roar now. This would prove that the Shade Tree probably is the Tree of Life, and how the roar ended up in the Pride Lands. This could also be the reason that Rafiki had been to the Tree of Life before, because in the Lion Guard we hear that Rafiki had met Makini, his apprentice, at the Tree of Life when she was younger. The moment he met her, the voices in the wind immediately told him that she would be the next royal Mjuzi. But how did Rafiki know how to get there? Well, easy, because if the Tree of Life was Obasi's Shade Tree, his brother, Mufasa, could have easily explained the way to it for him. When Rafiki met Makini there, we also see that Queen Janna was already at the Tree of Life, which could mean she was the one to get there after Kiros left. But that's not even all. Remember when Queen Janna said, "The roar, it has finally returned." This now gets a whole deeper meaning, because this could mean that it maybe wasn't only Ascari that once had the roar near the Tree of Life. Queen Janna learned a lot about the roar from the paintings on her wall, so was really excited to see it return. But what Queen Janna didn't get to see before she ended her circle of life is that the roar actually stayed at the Tree of Life. Because now that Kion has passed his roar onto Vitani, what will the future of the Tree of Life look like? Well, as you probably already know, Ascari gave Kion the roar back to help protect the Night Pride. Kion was overjoyed and became Queen Rani's king, and that is where the Lion Guard ended. But if you want to know more about the future of the Tree of Life, make sure to check out my video about that as well, because since Disney was too lazy to create a Lion Guard Season 4, I took matters into my own hands. But before you go on to that video, I actually really want to know what you think about the Tree of Life. Were the snowy mountains where Taka betrayed his brother the same as the ones that Kion and his friends traveled through? And was Queen Janna the one to find the magic in the Tree of Life, or had there been others before? And could this all mean that Obasi's Shade Tree actually is the Tree of Life? Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Make sure to hit that notification bell so you won't miss any of the new videos, and I'll catch you next time.